Welcome back. I'm Alan Tutt, and this is Lesson 13 of Divine Dynamics. Up to this point, our primary focus has been on manifesting the things you want in life, with only a few references to how you can tap into divine wisdom for assistance when needed. In this final lesson of Module 1, I want to give you a process you can use to get answers to any question and extend this process so you can feel divine guidance whenever you want it. The first thing I want to say is that there's a good reason this lesson is the last of this module. It requires substantially more work to master this than basic manifestation. The reason for this is because with basic manifestation, the only thing you have to do is form a clear message about what you want and connect with the divine long enough to communicate that message. To receive divine guidance, you may need to stay connected to the divine for longer periods of time, and this may not be as easy. It's like balancing on a unicycle. Easy to do for short periods of time, but you really have to be good at balancing before you can ride the thing and juggle at the same time. Luckily, there are ways to receive divine guidance that don't require as much work, and these will be our focus this week. The more advanced methods will be covered in Module 2. The first and simplest way to receive divine guidance is to use whatever process you want to manifest an answer to your question or a solution to your problem. Relax, go within, indulge in positive emotions, imagine that you have the perfect answer, then anchor this in with a feeling of absolute truth and divine power. That's it. Move on to whatever else you want to do, and the divine will find a way to get the answer to you through physical events. Honestly, this is how I tap into divine guidance most of the time. It's quick, it's easy, and it works even when you're not as fully prepared as you could be. Here's an example of what I mean. About 2 months ago, I purchased a new audio recorder. While the 2 professional recorders I already had were plenty good enough for the majority of the work I do, this new one has some features that will allow me to do some specialty recordings. Anyways, when I purchased this recorder, I also bought a new memory card for it. For some reason, this new card wouldn't work with the recorder, so I had to buy a different one. Instead of returning the first card, I decided to keep it, because I felt that it might come in handy sometime later. After all, it worked perfectly in my various cameras. So, fast forward several weeks, and about 2 weeks ago, I went to go get that card and realized it wasn't where I thought I'd put it. I was able to use a different card, so this wasn't a problem, but it kind of bugged me that I'd lost track of something. Over the following week, I spent several hours looking for that memory card. I even cleared out a couple of desk drawers thinking I may have put the card in one of them. Since I knew this lesson was coming up, I decided to use this as an example and proceeded to go through my process, which is a modified version of the harmonic prayer process and something I'll show you here in a few minutes. After relaxing and going within, I found that I had some difficulty connecting as strongly as I wanted. Asking my inner divine mind to show me where the card was located wasn't producing any information. Now, before I go any further, I'll tell you that my problem in this case was that I'd spent way too much time in the last month or so watching YouTube videos and Netflix. My mind had been gorging on media and other information, so I wasn't as clear as I needed to be to receive divine guidance directly. I could have solved this problem by doing a media fast for a day or two, with a few focused meditations on clearing my consciousness. But I really wanted to just find the card and get on with other things. So I ended that session and used a quick manifesting method we've talked about in the last couple lessons. I figured that if I couldn't get a good example of one process, I could at least get one using that method. Essentially, this meant that I made a conscious decision to believe that I already knew where the card was and that I would have it in my hand shortly. In other words, I imagined the card in my hand, as well as the feeling of confidence and trust. If I had used words, those words would have been, "I have it now." And as mentioned in our last 2 lessons, this took less than 10 seconds. Within a half hour of making that decision, I noticed some things on one of my bookshelves. And even though there was no logical reason the card would have been with those things, I pulled them off the shelf and found the card between 2 of the items, still in its original box. After finding the card, that's when I remembered putting it there. And why? The information was in my mind the whole time. However, I couldn't access it without a little help. I'll also mention that when I noticed the items on the shelf, there was nothing about that experience that suggested I was receiving divine guidance. No voice in my head, no appearance of heavenly light, nothing. Previous to that, I had looked in a couple of other spots, and looking at the items on that shelf felt exactly the same. Because of this, it would be perfectly logical to say that this may have just been a coincidence that I found the card within a half hour of manifesting it. And if this had been a single isolated case, that's what I would assume. But this type of thing has happened so many times. Coincidence stopped being a logical conclusion many years ago. Although this wasn't the story I wanted to be able to tell you, it's probably a better one for a couple of reasons. First, it lets you know that you don't have to be perfect to receive divine guidance. The story also lets you know that you probably shouldn't expect to hear the voice of God your first day. And finally, it shows you why you may want to abstain from certain activities when you want to get the best response possible. Now, I will admit that when I spend more time in meditation and prayer and less time binging on videos and movies, I find it much easier to connect with the divine and get direct answers to my questions. There have been a lot of times I relaxed into myself to get an answer to a question and received the answer before finishing my 10-to-1 countdown. So it can work quickly and clearly. You just have to be prepared for it. There are a few other methods of receiving divine guidance I want to share with you. Quite a few years ago, I noticed that I often woke up with clear ideas for improving myself and my business, and most often these would be the best ideas I got all day. Many folks experience a similar thing when they go to the bathroom or take a shower. Whenever we allow ourselves to relax and let go, our minds are more open to the influx of ideas from our subconscious, which is the channel through which we receive divine guidance. History is full of stories of how scientists, inventors, and artists would get some of their best ideas from dreams. The ideas for the sewing machine, the double helix structure of our DNA, and the theory of relativity all came from someone relaxing into themselves and allowing their deeper divine mind to show them the answer to a question. This isn't to say that everything you see in a dream is a message from the divine. Most dreams are the product of our minds working through details, including bits of information we notice during the day, as well as our feelings about things and the state of our physical bodies. If you're worried about things or physically in pain, this would be enough to produce nightmares and other bad dreams, which have no connection to reality. As mentioned earlier, I found it difficult to connect strongly enough to the divine to find the missing memory card. In my case, it was because I had spent too much time absorbing new information and other media, and not enough time relaxing into a meditative state. This isn't the only thing that can scatter our focus. Not getting enough exercise, fresh air, or healthy nutrition can all lead to the same result. If you're more socially inclined, connecting with other people helps to keep you in balance. Indulging in positive emotions is something we learned early on in this course as an aid to connecting with the divine. Engaging with those symbols that represent the divine, such as music, candles, incense, essential oils, crystals, prayer beads, or sitting inside a place of worship, can all help you refresh and deepen your connection to the divine. In order to clearly receive divine guidance, you need both a strong connection to the divine and a clear mind, open to receive information you may not expect. And of course, you also need a level of trust and faith that the guidance you desire will be forthcoming. The clear mind aspect of this is what makes the highest levels of mastery more difficult to achieve. Luckily, it's not an either-or situation where you can either receive divine guidance or you can't. If your mind is at least partially clear, your receiving radio will just have more static in it than if you were perfectly clear. Clearing the channel is the focus of traditional meditation, where you sit and do your best to think of nothing. The first time you try this, you'll find new ideas popping into your mind every few seconds. You may even feel that thinking of absolutely nothing is impossible and a waste of time. This is why most folks recommend that you start out focusing your mind on a single thing, such as a candle flame, a point on the wall in front of you, or a mental image of a lotus flower. Maintaining a focus on a single item is a lot easier than trying to focus on nothing at all. And once you get comfortable ignoring all other thoughts, it's a lot easier to take that last step and ignore your focus point as well. Even if you sit in a quiet place and focus on a single thing for just 5 minutes, that's a start. Once that starts to feel doable, extend your sessions to 10 minutes, then 15, then 20. Before you know it, you'll be able to sit in meditations for an hour or more. Now, there's no need to spend 12 hours a day in meditation like some monks do. It's also important to get out and get some fresh air and some exercise as well. It's all about balance. Spend some time in quiet meditation, some time in vigorous activity, some time working, and some time playing. And through it all, do what you can to stay connected to the divine, with a level of trust that you will be guided when necessary. This type of balanced living will prepare you to receive divine guidance, and you'll find that it will simply come on its own. You'll start to notice that you know things you couldn't have known from just your physical experience. For those of us who live in the modern world with the responsibilities of work and family, achieving this balance requires a bit of effort. Take 5 minutes out of every hour to relax, go within, and refresh your connection to the divine. What's really interesting is that when you do this, you become much more productive in your work, and you'll get more done in a day than you used to do before starting this process. If you really can't take 5 minutes out of each hour, set aside longer periods of time when you can. A half hour in the morning and a half hour in the evening works for many folks. Add a 5 to 10 minute session midday, and you're all set. Back when I was in high school, there was a period of time I would end my lunch break with a quick jog around the track. Whenever I did this, I found that my mind was clearer than usual, and what had been my toughest class, the one right after lunch, suddenly became so much easier. This is when I learned the value of fresh air and exercise, and how it can make us so much more productive. Later on, I found that doing 10 to 20 push-ups before a meditation session would often help me reach deeper levels than I could achieve otherwise. Okay, time for the homework. To better integrate what you've learned in this lesson, I recommend that you take 10 to 15 minutes each day and clear your mind as much as you can. Just sit and do nothing. Focus on a single thing, ignoring any other thoughts that come into your mind. The more you can do this, the easier it will be to receive divine guidance. When you have a question, use a modified version of the harmonic prayer process. Relax as deeply as you can, indulge in positive emotions to better connect with the divine, ask your question, then clear your mind and just wait for an answer. Don't try to force it, just let it happen on its own. If you want to add something to this process, focus on manifesting an answer before clearing your mind to receive it. The more you can live a balanced life, stay connected to the divine, and trust your divine connection to guide you, the more you will experience divine guidance, even if you don't actually feel guided. Now, this is the end of Module 1 of this course. It's been an amazing 3 months, hasn't it? I'd love to hear of your experiences and the manifestations you produced using this material. You are welcome to continue into Module 2 when you're ready. Before I just throw you into it, though, I want to give you an option to take a break in between modules. For this reason, I'm sending you some information to your email address. There's a link to a survey so you can give me your feedback on the course materials and your results using it. There will also be a link to click when you're ready to start receiving the lessons in Module 2. Whether you decide to continue into Module 2 or not, please know that I sincerely wish for you the best of all good things. Until next time, be blessed, my friend.